Listen carefully, folks. In Connecticut, for example, we have Fred Wilms running for treasurer who's a banker who doesn't talk about corruption. We got a guy running for Secretary of State named Lamage who's considering himself a patriot. He knows nothing about the Secretary of State. And we have more than 5 congressional candidates running that really don't know anything about saving the country or understanding military anything. Or we have Jim Himes as our intelligence officer on the Congress in my district, who's a complete idiot. And for example, I want to talk about any simple document you can find on the internet at any time. Okay, so they're not doing their homework, and we're sending the wrong people to Congress. I'm doing this to get them up to speed. Get them up to speed, okay? People can handle what we're talking about if they did some reading, which they don't do because if they're supported by Ben Proto, they're going to lose, okay? And they deserve to lose if they're in bed with Proto. So look on the screen, written submission of Standing Committee on National Defense. Okay. Read. What should we read? Canada's Named Research Organizations, NRO list, last updated April 2024. So Canada contains 103 institutions from China, Iran, and Russia connected to their military. Okay. Research and Affiliation Concerns, STRAC, effective May 1, 2024, prohibits federal grant applications to NSERC, CIHR, SSHRC, and CFI. The policy applies to grant applications. It does not apply to faculty hiring, visiting appointments, or postdoctoral arrangements. Researchers at 50 Canadian universities published joint papers from 2005 to 2022 with scientists connected to China's National University of Defense Technology, which is on the NRO list. They are concerned about missile guidance systems, mobile robotics, automated surveillance. Holy moly. Basically, national defense. The United Against Iran, UANI, formally contacted 8 Canadian universities in 2023, documenting research collaborations with NRO's listed Iranian institutions. Okay. The University of Manitoba, British Columbia, Western University, Alberta. None voluntarily ended their partnerships. The University of Manitoba president characterized a joint paper with an Iranian NRO listed institutions as casual collaboration. So Canada has a bunch of schools in bed with Iran sharing information. Okay, so what are they really concerned about? What should you really be concerned about? Well, read this sentence. 5 defense government gaps directly relevant to Canada's defense industrial strategic security screening at the point of hiring, directed energy weapon regulation. Okay, our directed energies are just conspiracy theory. In Canada, they identify directed energy weapons, and they're developing them for Iran. Semiconductor element testing for implantable technology. I have 20 semiconductors inside me. I have one right here. I have one in my ear. I have one in my clavicle. I have multiple ones in my thigh, abdomen. You guess. In my back, I have 3. Why? Because I went to Whiting, where they injected me with all kinds of shit. We don't know what the fuck it is. So hold on. When I say you should be pissed off, these implantable technologies, private military contractors, and procurement transparency enforcement mechanisms under the Crimes Against Humanity and War Crimes Act. So I brought an action under the War Crimes Act in the federal court with Judge Meyer, and I put 150 defendants in there, and no one answered. Okay, Blumenthal, Murphy, Himes, they should have answered. So they arrested me under false charges, and they tortured me for 149 days. So bear with me. The framework consisted in a master brief. Did anyone read it? Every claim in this submission is verified. Primary sources are cited and summarized in Section 6. So, Canada's NRO list is different than America's. Unfortunately, we got Yale working with Ukraine, testing vaccines on orphans that they created and they collected. But this is the section I'd like to read in its entirety. Directed energy weapon and criminal code gap. Well, Canada recognizes it, and we don't. So I thought maybe I should run for Congress and beat the ever-loving crap out of these people who deserve an ass-whooping. The United States Department of Defense defines directed energy weapons in its Dictionary of Military and Associated Terms. The Criminal Code of Canada contains no equivalent definition and no offense provision to directed energy. A directed energy weapon used on a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil cannot be prosecuted. Let me repeat that. A directed energy weapon used on a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil cannot be prosecuted. This is a gap. However, a U.S. electronic directed energy weapon on a Canadian citizen can be prosecuted because there's no precedent. It's not illegal. So the lady who sent me this is very intelligent. The IRGC and the Imam Hossein University of the Revolutionary Guard appears on both of the named research organizations list and the current listed entities terrorist designation list. The United States Department of Defense operates a dedicated directed energy directorate, published acquisition programs for directed energy systems that Judge Meyer and Judge Oliver in the Connecticut Federal Court don't recognize because they are communists working for, guess who? The UK Ministry of Defense published DOSR N2605 addressing directed energy. Canada has no criminal code provision, no clinical protocol. The submission is not identified as a defined enforcement authority specific to directed energy systems. So Susan, under attack in Alabama, just got released from a psych ward, called me 4 times, and is submitting documents to our case in Connecticut. And she's been sending me the documents to my phone for quite some time, and none of them appear in the court screen. So, what am I saying? I'm saying Plaintiff 1, John Flynn. Who's Plaintiff 2? Sherry Mellanax. Why doesn't she show? Who's Plaintiff 3? Autumn Maddox is Plaintiff 3. Who's Plaintiff 4? George Benavides is Plaintiff 4. Who's Plaintiff 5? Susan Pierce. So Susan is saying to her psych ward, I'm a plaintiff in a lawsuit. This is witness tampering. And the court in Alabama is in collusion with Judge Ozales in the Stanford Superior Court, who's instructing the clerk not to process the appearances of everyone else. Now that Mohegan Sun is involved as a defendant, we have to change the court from Stanford back to the federal court, where we've been getting fucked all day. See Defendant 8? Learn his name. Learn it. Drew Edward tried to kill me. He's a doctor. Tell me, where's Dr. Berger on this list? Where's Dr. Salcido on this list? They resigned from Whiting for torture, a claim of torture. Go down to the case and tell me administrative documents. Look at them all. What do they say? Well, there's the cover sheet. Lack of fee. I filed a fee waiver. Lack of fee. I filed a fee waiver. Lack of fee. Where's the fee waiver? The clerk lost it. I sent another fee waiver. Where's the fee? I don't have to pay the fee. I'm exempt from the fee. Why? Why am I exempt from the fee? Why is Susan exempt from the fee? Why is Autumn exempt from the fee? Why is Sherry exempt from the fee? Well, guess what? They don't show any of the motions that we filed. Here's a motion. Wow. We requested our 30th grand jury for ChatGTP and suicidal ideation. That's number 30. Where's 1 through 29? It doesn't show. We just had a case where they heard motion 64. So I said to the judge, Your Honor, where's motion 1 through 63? Well, here's duplicate 33, Epstein, Connecticut, nanotech by Groff. Epstein, Connecticut, nanotech by Groff. Where's the exhibit? they don't show it. You should be concerned about nanotech by Epstein partnering with Gillette, who's a bioengineer in Connecticut that runs Pura, that put graphene in the jab for Epstein. Need I say more? I could say more. The more I say, the better off we are, right? Let's erase that. What did Ken do? Ken filed a motion for default for failure to disclose a defense. Okay, that was 2 years ago. More, 2.5 years ago. And what happened? The court shut him down because the defendant was forging the judge's signature on orders in the courtroom. Let me repeat that. The motion for default for failure to disclose a defense was never heard because the defendant, no. Ken is the defendant. The plaintiff is Ken's lawyer. Let's be clear. The judge's signature is being forged. In Connecticut. Okay, no one's paying attention. That we understand. And I was reading this document about directed energy weapons. Section 3, Semiconductor Element Testing and Implantable Technological Oversight Gap. On May 28th, which was 2 weeks ago, Medical Director of Cadman Provincial Laboratory in Manitoba confirmed in writing that no clinical testing exists in Manitoba or anywhere in Canada for iridium, hafnium, tantalum, or niobium. Tantalum and niobium are used in capacitors for aerospace, electronics, and weapons guidance systems. Okay. Iridium is used in implantable medical devices and high-temperature alloys. All four appear on Canada's Critical Materials Strategy list. The absence of clinical testing capacity for these elements means no Canadian physician can order a test to confirm or exclude their presence in the patient's body. You see, Canada's make it easier for Americans to push the issue in federal court. And that's what we need in the Congress. Someone to say, if Johnny Flynn has a chip between his eyes so they can read what he's reading, they want to read this document. If Rita Sika has a chip in her eyes because she's reading confidential 3-letter agency documents, we should understand what Rita Sika's reading. Wow. Canada has regulatory frameworks governing medical devices, pharmaceuticals, and human subject research. Let's print this sucker, huh? Enable editing. Okay. File, print. Make it an exhibit, Johnny. We were just talking about directed energy weapons. And then we looked at semiconductor oversight for implants, military contractor procurement. Well, that's where the list of defendants comes in. And if we go back to the court case, there are 650 people who are served or should be served in this lawsuit. And the Stamford Superior Court says there are 19. Now, Susan Story is a public defender. She should be in jail for falsely maintaining that Dennis Bradley was working for the public defender's office when he is a Jim Himes staffer. Now, Jim Himes is a defendant. Where is his name? It's not here. So what I'm saying is these assholes are protecting Blumenthal and Murphy and Himes while they implant people they want to kill with various technology implants so they can, A, remote neural monitor you, use brain-computer interface, and fuck you till the cows come home. Am I going to stand for that? Well, I'm standing alone. I am standing alone. Look at this list. Judge Oliver's name is Judge Vernon Oliver. Okay? Not Samantha Judge Oliver. That person doesn't exist. So the clerk intentionally misspelled the judge's name, and he did not appear because the name is spelled wrong. Edwin O'Gara needs to be arrested. I told the state's attorney, and now I'm asking for the arrest of the state's attorney, because when you look, Kevin, K-O-R-N-G, is not Kevin Young. Kevin Young got served, not Kevin Korg. These are the people they're willing to hang out to dry, and they are represented by Leo Rutchick, Sean Leo Rutchick. Now, Attorney General Tong is a defendant, served on February 15th. So why does he have the state AG defending Attorney General Tong, who needs his own representation, who kept these names off the list? Attorney General Tong got served on February 17th. He should be on this list. He's not, because he's being propped up in the election fraud machine, and he signed the contracts for Diebold that suppresses the scanning function for the digital image of the ballot. Then they destroy the cast vote record and the actual ballot, so there's no record of who voted for who. And that's why I've been asking people to sue Connecticut for destroying the cast vote record and telling Lamage to start doing what you need to do to win, which is guaranteeing the public that if Peter Lamage is elected, that he will produce the cast vote record, give it to me, and I will prosecute every single asshole who cheats. And that's the way it has to be. Thanks for listening.